Investor Jim Rogers, something is coming that will replace the US dollar. Legendary investor Jim Rogers predicts that the US dollar's world dominance will quit in simply a few years, thanks to the country's huge debt, tensions with China, protests, and political uncertainty. I'm an American, so I don't clearly like announcing it. However, I'm afraid the US greenback is coming to its century or so of dominance, and something else will exchange it. Rogers, 77, stated throughout an interview with RT on the weekend. The greenback is about to lose its repute as the world's foremost reserve currency. Rogers stated following reviews that the No. 2 US debt holder, China, is anticipated to limit its US debt holdings with the aid of 20% from $1 trillion to $800 billion. China should even sell all of its US bonds in an intense case like an army conflict, Chinese state-run newspaper The Global Times reported. Rogers co-founded the Quantum Fund in 1973 with billionaire investor George Soros, regarded one of the most profitable hedge cash of its day, Bitcoin.com reported. US indebtedness greater than $26.73 trillion will take a toll on the US dollar, Rogers said. The US is now the greatest debtor state in the records of the world, and it's getting greater and greater each day, he said. Traditionally, the US greenback has been the soundest foreign money in the world, but way of life changes, Rogers said, citing different currencies that have been as soon as viewed the most reliable, such as the British pound and Dutch guilder. The greenback ought to nevertheless exhibit electricity subsequent year if the US resolves the turmoil of the protests and the November presidential election. However, he expected it will probably be the dollar's final shot. Some analysts have estimated that the presidential election effect ought to give way the US dollar and ship the expenditures of gold and Bitcoin skyrocketing, Bitcoin.com reported. I don't like saying it, but something will replace the US dollar. Investor Jim Rogers says century of USD reign is ending. The dollar is on the brink of losing its status as the world's main reserve currency, prominent US investor Jim Rogers told RT, following reports of China's plans to drop a huge chunk of its American debt holdings. With a national debt of over $26.5 trillion, the US is now the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, and it's getting higher and higher every day, Rogers said, adding that it's going to take a toll on the century's currency. Traditionally, the US dollar has been the soundest currency in the world, but tradition changes, he pointed out, referencing the fate of the British pound and Dutch guilder, which in previous centuries were considered the most reliable currencies. I'm an American, so I don't really like saying it, but I'm afraid the US dollar is coming to its century or so of dominance, and something else will replace it. The dollar may still show strength next year, after the current turmoil in America caused by the Black Lives Matter protests and the election is over, but that will probably be its last shot, Rogers said. The experienced investors' comments come in the wake of a report in the Chinese state-run newspaper The Global Times, in which top local experts said that Beijing will likely reduce its US debt holdings by 20% from $1 trillion to $800 billion amid the current tensions with Washington. China might even go as far as to sell all of its US bonds. In an extreme case, like a military conflict, it won't. If Beijing really decides to drop a fifth of its American debt holdings, it's going to put pressure on interest rates in the US, Rajas believes. Interest rates in the US should be going up, so from China's point of view, it's a smart economic and investment move, as well as whatever they're doing politically, said the investor who co-founded the Quantum Fund and Soros Fund Management. It will also help Chinese authorities to strengthen the yuan. If they sell US debt, they sell dollars. Therefore, their currency goes higher, which has already been happening for several weeks, Rajas pointed out. Like some other nations, China may be willing to get rid of its US debt holdings because of the current turbulence in America and the tough foreign policies of the Trump administration. If Washington gets angry at you, it puts sanctions on you that hurts everybody. So the Chinese, the Russians, the Indians, the Brazilians, and other countries are starting to look for an alternative competing currency to the US dollar. The plans that are likely underway in Beijing, the world's second largest American debt holder, are not good for the US, but chances are that Washington won't take this threat seriously enough, in Raja's view. You know, Trump thinks he's smarter than everybody in the world, so they will probably do whatever they want to do and think, don't worry, we're Washington and we can take care of it. According to a new forecast by Morgan Stanley, Beijing's push for greater use of the yuan internationally may make it the world's third largest reserve currency within a decade, reaching 5 to 10% of reserve assets by 2030. If you comply with Gundlach, you possibly already comprehend that he has been lifeless and correct with regard to the economic markets over the previous couple of years. So when he says that the inventory market should be down massively and that it is time to sell everything, we need to all take him very, very seriously. All through history, a big decline in company profits has nearly constantly resulted in a massive decline in inventory prices. As Jesse Felder has noted, we have in no way considered a decline in salary of this magnitude, bearing at least 20% fall in inventory prices, all through the final 50 years. In the end, we ought to all be grateful that this absurd monetary bubble has lasted for as lengthy as it has, due to the fact steadiness is a good deal greater than instability. The US economic system and the US economic device have loved an extended duration of steadiness that has defied all the odds, and let us hope that it lasts for at least a little whist longer. Most of the idea, comment, information, and criticism containing in these videos have been created by Daily News Report. Before making any important investment decision, use the information contained in these videos as a starting point for conducting your own research. If you make any investment or legal decision, it is advised to consult an expert before making this decision.